Hi guys, welcome back to Iron Kaiser Gaming, and welcome to a first for the channel. We've got our first ever tier list. A couple of videos back, I put out a video on how to begin learning to play Age of Empires competitive online multiplayer. And one of the tips that I shared was to pick a particular civ and stick with that civilization. You're already learning so much about the game, so many skills like keeping your town centers going and learning what units counter what, that, it'll be helpful to not have every game, you find yourself stopping and going, wait a minute, what is my bonus again? What is my unique unit? What do I do? Right? Maining one civilization helps streamline that process of the game. Now, having said that, not every civilization is equally valuable for learning Age of Empires 2. Some civilizations are better at it, some civilizations are worse, and indeed some civilizations might even teach you some bad habits. So naturally the question arises, what civilization should I learn the game on? And that's what this video is all about. I've got alongside me my usual casting buddy, Hiram of Tyre. Hiram, how you doing today?
You always ask me that, and my answer is it's always a good day when I get to cast some Age. And as it happens, the same thing is true when we're not casting, but just talking about it.
Yeah.
I love this game. I love talking about it. I love diving into it, and so it is a good day.
Exactly. We're gonna dive into some AoE, and I'm just so tickled pink to have you aboard. I'm gonna change that. Hold on. Well, exactly. We're going to go ahead and dive into some Age of Empires, and it is awesome to have you joining me. So let's go ahead and dive into our tier list. And before we start talking civs, I want to put out two disclaimers. First, this is a tier list about which civilizations are the best ones to learn Age of Empires on. It is not a tier list on which civs are the strongest or which civs are the best, period. In fact, there are quite a few civilizations that I know would rank very highly in your typical pro player or even average player best of tier list that will rank rather lowly on ours because we're focused on learning the game from the new player experience. The second disclaimer I want to share is, regardless of what we say here, if you have a particular affinity for any of the civilizations, I would encourage you to ignore what we're saying, pick that civilization, and learn the game on that civ, because the most important thing is that you are having fun. So if you're the kind of person, maybe you're ethnically French and you love the idea of playing the Franks, or you have an absolute fascination with medieval Celtic history, and so the idea of playing as the Celts really excites you, then by all means go in with those civilizations, regardless of where they place on the tier list. You being engaged and having fun is the most important factor in learning and getting good at Age of Empires 2. But with that in mind, let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so first we're looking at the Aztecs. And I gotta say, Hiram, first off, I don't think that any of the Meso-civilizations can rank any higher than average on my tier list. And the reason why is pretty straightforward. None of those Meso-civilizations have access to the stable. And I think that just for a new player who's just learning the game and trying to figure out how things work, I think it's important to have the stable, to know how scouts work, to know how knights work. And if you're playing a Meso-civ, you don't have access to the stable, you're trying to figure out what eagle warriors do, I just think that, again, any of these Meso-civs, it's just an extra layer of confusion that I would not want to put onto a newer player.
So there's a couple sides to that, right? Which is, you do have a layer of complexity with these eagle warriors. What are they strong against, weak against? How do you deal with cavalry? What do you do instead? That kind of thing.
Right.
My take on that is, the Meso-civs, they're in the game anyway, right? Like, so you're going to have to learn about the differences between the Eagle Warrior line and the cavalry, and how the Meso deals with lack of cavalry, what they do well and poorly. Anyway, if you play a cavalry civ, or especially an archer civ or anything else, you're going to run into these eagles and you're going to have to figure them out. And in my experience, the best way to figure them out is to play them, because I can tell you from experience, when I started going against experienced players using eagles, my thought was they're unbeatable. And they're not. They're just not. But you don't know that unless you've tried playing as them. They have a weird feel. So I don't necessarily count out the Meso-civs on that front, especially because, if you're a brand new player, okay, you don't have cavalry, but you're not used to using cavalry. You're not reliant on them. And you're not going to be playing all the units all the time anyway.
Right. It's just that as far as the stable thing goes, I would prefer a newer player, to learn the game on a civ that more closely mirrors the general experience. And I feel like if you learn the game with the Aztec or the Inca or the Maya, then you're learning, again, the Meso-civs for sort of those three civilizations, and then you got to do more mental, gymnastics to kind of figure out how the other 39 civs work, rather than learning on, say, the Berbers or whatever, and you have the access to that stable line, and then how the stable works for the 39 civs, and then you can kind of figure out from there, once you have a handle on the game, how the three Meso-civs work. That's kind of my thinking, but...
Well, I grant that,
yeah,
and I do. Like, in my experience, it's not hard to learn what you should do against Cav. It's hard to potentially do it.
Right.
It's not easy to deal with Cav.
Right.
But what you do to deal with Cav is not that hard, And Cav doesn't become complicated. It just becomes stronger, faster, heavier, that kind of thing. Not more complicated. And so, in my opinion,
right.
there's, again, it does add a little bit of a learning curve to it. But, again, you're going to have to learn it one way or another. And I'll add this in for Meso in general.
Right.
Sometimes it's better to learn the non-meta way first, because once you get, and I'm going to touch on this as this video goes on, once you kind of learn the meta, it's easy to get locked into, I always do this every time, and you're just practicing one move, one play, and when it fails, you feel, oh, crap, I've lost, throw up your hands and surrender. And it doesn't actually help teach you the game. It just teaches you, the scout rush or whatever. And so a civ that forces you already to break the meta has some significant learning potential.
Perhaps. Now, talking about the Aztecs in particular, I think you alluded to this. The one thing that makes them a very difficult civ, because if you pull up the civilization, you look at their bonuses, some of these bonuses look really good for a player to learn the civilization on. They have this military units created faster bonus, which is a nice generic buff that would be exactly what I would be looking for a noob civ. It helps you out, it makes your game a little bit smoother, but it doesn't give you some sort of reality warping change that will greatly impact your experience with any other civilization. It's just a nice all-around solid buff. And then you have that villager carry capacity bonus, which is a nice bonus. It helps your economy in the long run, and that's, again, a civilization, a bonus that would seem to be perfect for a new civ, a new player experience. But there is a hidden flaw in that bonus that means I would strongly recommend not playing the Aztecs first with that carry capacity bonus, and here's what it is. With almost every civilization you play, you're going to have the same standard opening. You're going to start off with 6 villagers on sheep, and then you're going to send the next 4 villagers to wood. And as you keep, your shepherds working on sheep, and the villagers go to wood, you're keeping your town center producing villagers. And normally, as long as you're sending the sheep under the town center and you're keeping things going, you will always have just enough food to click up to the next villager by the time the last one comes out. And then you have 6 on sheep, 4 on wood, and then for the next villager, you're going to lure the boar in, get the boar under the town center, shoot the boar down, and then finally, as you have those 7 villagers on boar, you're going to need to practice dropping off resources, where you can't wait for the villagers to fill up their pockets and automatically drop off resources. You need to manually drop off the resources yourself in order to keep the town center producing. that's a rhythm that you get into with almost every civilization in the game. It becomes mechanical. It becomes, again, part of the rhythm of your opening moves. With the Aztecs, because of their carry capacity bonus, you run into one of two situations. Either you have to develop a completely different rhythm where you are force dropping your resources with every other sheep in order to keep your town center producing, or you stay on the same rhythm as normal, and because their resource pockets are extra large, you actually will not be dropping off food at the right time, and your town center will keep going into idling as you're collecting more and more food. So your rhythm gets all off thanks to this bonus, and I think that's one of the most important things for a newer player to learn is the rhythm and the flow of the early game. I think that the Aztecs kind of mess that rhythm up, and so for me, I think I got to put him in Dangerous Habits at the very bottom of the list. I could appreciate maybe difficult to play or appreciate. I could see putting them there, but I just think that learning that rhythm is so important that it threatens your experience with all of the other civs if you play with the Aztec.
I disagree on the dangerous habits. I don't think it teaches any dangerous habits.
Mm-hmm.
It's not teaching you to do something you should not do in general. I mean, it is making you do something you don't have to do in general. But it's not a dangerous habit. I have a column or a row in mine called secondary learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
And I have it there. I think they have strong and potent bonuses, so I think that's worth calling out. And if you want to do it, they have some things that do slot you towards helping you learn some of how the game works.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you have to be willing to deal with a secondary learning curve. And if you're brand new at the game, and especially if you're new to RTSs in general, it's just not worth it. I'd move on, which breaks my heart because the Aztecs was the first civ I named.
Mm-hmm. All right, next we've got the Bengalis. This is a brand new civilization that just came out with the Dynasties of India expansion pack. I do like the idea of the town center spawning 2 additional villagers when the next age is reached. I think that can help encourage you to understand and appreciate the importance of additional villagers. It can help make up for some of the idle TC time that inevitably results with newer players. On the flip side, you don't have much of a stable at all. You have scouts and then elephants. For me, I'm thinking with a civ that is so focused, the Bengalis right now, as of this recording, they are far and away the weakest civilization on the ladder. And again, this is not a tier list that's based off of how strong or weak a civ is, but the Bengalis are due for a buff right now. They're seen as particularly uniquely weak, and I worry that learning the game on elephants when so much of the civilization is geared toward this sort of niche unit, I don't think that they're particularly well suited for learning the game. So for me, the ship regeneration bonus is nice if you're learning maybe Navy or something like that. But the Ratha are a confusing, unique unit for newer players. They're a fun, unique unit, but switching stances is not something that any other civilization uses. Elephants, I just think that they're a unit that are best left until you have a little bit of a grasp of the game under your belt. I'm going to put them on difficult to play or appreciate.
Yeah, I'm going to put them at least there. I might put them on no bueno. No, there's no might. I am going to put them on no bueno, and here's why. Number one, they don't teach the game. None of the real meta of the game at all. Even their, some of their bonuses, like town center spawning 2 villagers, that's great.
Yeah.
But that's almost in dangerous habits territory. It's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking the bonus itself, but it's not conducive to learning the game because, part of the game is how to balance your economy and who to send where. Are we going to go into an eco boom? Are we going to go into a military boom? Just throwing 2 random villagers between feudal and castle age is supremely unhelpful for learning that tempo. honestly, a lot of what you said about the Aztecs in different ways applies here. Just like the Aztecs, they don't get stables, not really. I mean, they kind of do, but they're relying on this whole battle elephant Ratha thing, and it's just different.
Yeah.
Without being, I don't know, without helping you learn the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I put this on avoid.
Yeah. Next up, we have the Berbers, and these guys, I like them. I think that this is a good civilization for learning the game on. One of the really nice ones is the villager moves faster bonus. That's really nice, both on an economic level. It helps make your eco just that much smoother. It also means, so like, let's say that you put down a lumber camp, right, and your villagers are going back and forth, and as a newer player, you're probably not going to be building your lumber camps over and over and over again closer to your wood line. So just faster moving villagers means that they're a little bit more productive. They're better on farmers as well. It also means that if you're being attacked, they can get to the town center just a little bit faster. So it's easier to keep them safer, right? I think this is a nice bonus. And then you have the stable units costing less in the Castle Age and the Imperial Age, which encourages you. This is a bonus that encourages you to learn how to play knights. I think it's a nice, useful bonus that also encourages massing and learning that bonus and the importance of numbers. So for me, I'm going to put them on strong bonuses. I don't think that they teach you, they don't reinforce any particularly good habits, but this is a nice civilization with some nice solid bonuses. I think this is a nice one to learn the game on.
Yeah, I put it in strong bonuses, just same as you. There are some things that I don't like about it. Some of their units are just, like Camel Archer, right? Is that Cav or is it an Archer? Again, we know the answer. But
Right.
There's a new Civ, a new player. Is that something you want to put on them? Genitor, how about that? That's different. Little things like that. Just it's going to have a particular trick to it that does not carry over to most civs. But then again, a lot of civs are like that.
That's true. I mean, that is a very fair point. You got the Genitor, you have the Camel Archer, and those are confusing. I mean, even sometimes I'll forget that the Camel Archer counters cavalry archers, not camels in general. I'm sorry,
Exactly.
not knights, like cavalry in general. So, they still confuse me sometimes, let alone for a newer player trying to figure out what exactly do Camel Archers do, what do Genitors do. That's fair. I would still say that the basic bonuses, give it that strong bonus category. No higher than that, but I like them.
I like them. I think they're worth doing, but I definitely don't put them in my top tier. Learn on this civ.
Yeah.
So they've got some things that make it hard, and that's worth pointing out. On the other hand, one thing that they do have going for them is a completely full blacksmith. And considering how important blacksmith technologies are, not lacking any of them is helpful to learning the game.
Possibly, yeah. Speaking of blacksmiths, let's move on to the next civilization, the Bohemians. And the Bohemians have a couple of bonuses that I do like. I like how the blacksmith and the universities cost 100 less wood. I think that is a really nice bonus that helps to reinforce to newer players the importance of those buildings. Because I think for a newer player, it can be easy to forget about your blacksmith or to forget about the university and to think, what do those even do? And so a bonus like this sort of helps remind you to put one down and see what they might have. And then you start looking at the text and realizing, wait a minute, some of these technologies would actually be really useful for me. So I do like that bonus. On the other hand, I cannot ignore the fact that they also have the Spearman line extra bonus damage, which is nice for like countering cav, scout rushes, and that sort of thing. So I do like that. Those are two nice bonuses for newer players. But the Bohemians are a civilization that are designed to be played around their weird Castle Age hand cannons. You have the Hussite wagon with all of its very unique positional bonuses, and because the composition that they are arguing for is so strange and so unique, and the other strategy the Bohemians are good at, the Castle Age Kembos, are not really advertised that well by the bonuses for a newer player to look at and see. For me, I've got to put them on difficult to play. Just because what they gear you toward is pikes and hand cannons, and then you go up to Imp and you get up the... You have the Hussite wagons already. You've got the Hufnitze. I don't think that's a good civ to learn on.
Yeah, I put them in no bueno for pretty much what you said. Effectively, they're a good civ, but they're a good civ if you already know how to play the game, because so much of their line is this, except it does that other thing too. And if you neither know what this does nor that, or you're not practiced in both, then it's just going to be like numbers, stuff, bonus, I guess, kind of thing. Like, Hufnitze, it's a better bombard cannon. Well, what's a bombard cannon? It just changes things. Yeah. So chemistry and hand cannonery are available in the Castle Age. Well, why is that a big deal? What do they counter anyway? What does that help anyway? And so they require secondary, to get your bonus to the villagers. You've got to build a monastery to upgrade your town center villas. To get chemistry, you've got to build a university to upgrade your archery range things, and so on and so on and on. I don't think it's helpful to learn the game. I think it's a strong and fun civ to play once you know the game, but it's not going to be fun to learn.
Yeah.
They're down at the very bottom.
I think that a civ that would get high marks from me on a tutorial civ is a civ that stays fairly close to the default generic Age of Empires experience. It doesn't get too far off the beaten path, but maybe encourages you toward a particular strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
It points you in a particular direction, but it doesn't go so wild and crazy that learning the Bohemians means you're not learning any other civilization. That seems to be what it would feel like.
Absolutely agreed.
Yeah. And speaking of, we move to the next civilization, the Britons. Hiram, I gotta say, I'm wondering whether this will be a controversial take between the two of us. I think this is the first excellent tutorial civ. I can see the argument. I'm sorry, say what?
I don't disagree a bit.
Okay, yeah. This is a fantastic civilization for learning the game on, particularly if you, as a newer player, are wanting to learn how to play archers. I mean, let's go through these bonuses. You have shepherds working 25% faster. This is a fantastic eco bonus that gets you your food from your sheep faster. It does not mess with the traditional 6 villagers on sheep, 4 on wood, next on boar approach. You don't have to change up that rhythm at all as the Britons, but you can also go for 5 on sheep and 5 on wood or something like that. You can do it that way too and actually gather more food than normal that way as well. It's a great eco bonus, coupled with the cheaper town center bonus. Now, I'm guessing for newer players, you're probably not going to be throwing down multiple town centers and producing out of multiple TCs right out of game 1, game 2, game 3. But as you get a little more comfortable with Age of Empires and you start learning the importance of building multiple TCs, producing villas out of multiple TCs, that Briton bonus will just make it that much easier to multitask, producing your eco and getting your military out at the same time. The archer range that you get additional range on your archers in the Castle Age and then even more in the Imperial Age. That gives them a really strong military bonus. It points you toward a very common, very important AoE2 composition, which is archers, right? And it's just, they are a very strong civilization for newer players. And as you mature from a new player into a somewhat more experienced player, they are a really, really great civ.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said. I think I take a different tact on why I think they're a good civ. Mm-hmm. Primarily, one of the things I'm looking for is flexibility. You know, if you're a one-trick pony, you're gonna go X and then Y and then Z, and whether it works or not, you're gonna do the same thing next game and next game and next game until you can do it, until you can win with it.
Yeah.
That's helpful to get wins, but it's not helpful to learn the game.
Yeah.
What the Britons have going for them is they have a strong strategy in the archers, but they have the flexibility to go a lot of other things too. Their archers are strong, but their infantry are pretty dang good. Their cavalry aren't bad.
Yeah.
Their siege, until you get into the final age, until you get into the imperial age, their siege are pretty respectable. You don't have everything, but you've got respectable siege. Full blacksmith techs, full dock, pretty much. Again, you know, you're missing some of the stuff in the imperial age, but for most of the game, you're not pigeonholed into a particular strat. You've got the flexibility without being so slanted in that direction that, well, that's all you're going to do. You want to pick Britons and, you know, practice your Dark Age rush. They're good at it in no small part because of your shepherds work faster. You can get 1 over to gold early, or you can generate a little bit extra food. Speaking of that, one of the things I like is, just like with the Aztecs, your start is going to be a little off. Just because while not forcing the drop off the way the Aztecs do, it does mean you're going to process through your sheep faster, and your boar timing is going to be more crucial. You're going to have to be a little more on your game, but that's a good habit, not a bad habit. That's something that if you get good at, it will make you better at every other civ, not just at the Britons.
Yeah.
So they've got some difficulty. They've got particular slants, but both the difficulty and the slants help you learn the game.
Yeah.
Rather than pigeonholing you into a just learning the civ. And so they're one of my very favorite learn on this civ. Tutorial civs.
I would say, and on top of what you just mentioned, which is great, another habit that the Britons help encourage is actually found in their team bonus. One of the most important skills that you have to learn as an Age of Empires 2 player is the importance of massing up units, getting up numbers, right? And that's especially important if you're going to play archer civs. Even more so than knight civilizations. You can do more with one knight than you can with one archer. Archers get their strength in numbers. And so having a team bonus where your archery ranges all work 20% faster, I think it encourages, it might maybe give you a false intuition on how easy it is to mass up archers with any other civ, but I think it does encourage you to say, hey, keep producing out of your archery ranges and build up those numbers faster and faster. And I think that's a good habit to learn. If there's anything about this civilization that I don't like, the thing that I don't like is the fact that their unique unit, the longbowman, is another version of the archer, which they're already good at. And so I think it could be a little confusing for a newer player. Again, it's a little confusing for me sometimes, let alone a newer player, to say, okay, should I be going crossbows? Should I be going longbowmen? Do I do both? When do I make the switch from one into the other? I would prefer... I tend to prefer civilizations where the unique unit naturally synergizes with the strategy you're going for, rather than competing against it. I think that's the only mark that I'd put against the Britons, but that doesn't stop me from putting them at the top of the list.
Yeah, absolutely true. One of the other things I do want to point in is just kind of like what you're saying, their bonuses trend towards improving units that are already in play. You know, their longbowmen are going to have the longest range of any archer, but their bonuses to archer's range apply to normal units as well.
Right.
So you can play the entire game to your civ's strength, etc., without ever building your unique unit. And I think that's important to learning the game.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Good.
I agree. No, I was just going to agree with you, yeah. So, next up, we have the Bulgarians. The Bulgarians have some really nice bonuses. They have the town centers costing 50% less stone, which is nice. Again, if you're once you move from complete noob into getting a little better at the game, and you're thinking, hey, I need to produce more town centers and produce multiple villagers out of multiple town centers. Having that cheaper stone cost on the TCs is really nice. So that's a nice bonus and encourages you to develop that habit. You have the free militia line upgrades, which is nice for learning how to play with infantry. Now, as we're going to see over this tier list, I tend to not rate the infantry civilizations as highly as archer civs and cavalry civs. I think there's a reason that those two civs are in the meta, and I would prefer newer players to learn how to play with archers and learn how to play with knights, and from there figure out when the right appropriate time is to play with infantry. I think that, pretending that infantry civs are just as viable as the others and learning off of those civs can be dangerous. But it's not as if the Bulgarians are exclusively an infantry civ. The Krepost is a fun building to play with. I think fun is important. And the big one for me is that blacksmiths both work way faster and they are 50% cheaper. So those two bonuses combined encourage you, remember your blacksmith, remember your blacksmith, remember your blacksmith. That's one of those habits that I hammer home to new players again and again and again and again. And so for me, I'm putting Bulgarians in the good habits club.
So that's where I put them, same as you, which is surprising because I thought you would place them a little higher, knowing your affinity for the Civ. But it means you're doing a good job of being impartial, which is good for a tutorial.
Right.
I agree, because there are some things that are going to make it hard to be competitive with. Your conic, when they die, your unique cavalry, when they die, they turn into an infantry, and the whole okay, how do I manage this? Because if you try to bandbox select it, then you're going to slow down your cavalry. It gets confusing, and so it's got some difficulty there. And they don't have the strongest cavalry by any stretch, or the strongest infantry by any stretch. So they've got some difficulty with them. Having said that, go ahead.
No, I was going to debate whether or not they have the strongest cavalry. They're pretty up there once you research. But I think it's Begains, isn't it? It's their stirrups. It's the tech that gives them an additional attack. They rank pretty highly.
Paladin. They're high, but they are missing Paladin, and that isn't nothing.
No, I agree. They're not the best of the best.
So they're not the best cavalry. They're not the best infantry. They certainly aren't the best archer.
Right.
So you've got a little bit of an uphill battle in some regards. Having said that, playing this civilization is going to do a few things. It's going to teach you, if you're going to lean into your militia line upgrades, it's going to teach you either tech switching from cavalry into, got to have an infantry on the back line, which is handy, or it's going to teach you the value of early aggression. So that's helpful.
Right.
Your town centers costing less stone is going to help you get over that hump of putting down castles and town centers. So it's going to help you. Your blacksmith techs, Siege Workshop less so, but your blacksmith techs in particular being cheaper is going to make it easier to make the habit of always getting your blacksmith techs. And you can learn the same thing, get your blacksmith techs, with the higher food costs on every other civ without a training scar. So it's got some uphill stuff. But it is definitely, if you get good at the Bulgarians, you'll, in my opinion, have a good set of habits that'll translate or begin, letting you branch out into something else.
Now, this next civilization that we have, I keep going back and forth on this because I could see an argument for two very different possibilities. We have the Burgundians. And for me, the big question for a newer player, tutorial civ, is the issue of having the ecotechs be cheaper and available one age earlier. On the one hand, I could see that going as high as the Good Habits Club because it reinforces the importance of your economic techs. I think that's something that for newer players, they tend to forget. They don't remember to pick up their lumber mill technologies or their farm techs. And you make your economy in the long term much weaker if you're not picking up your farm upgrades, your lumber mill upgrades, your stone mining whatever, just all of the different ecotechs. They're important to get, particularly the farm and the wood techs and wheelbarrow, right? So, and handcart. So on the one hand, I could see it being as high as good habits. On the other hand, the fact that these techs are so much cheaper and they're available so much earlier, possibly I could see the argument for saying, wait a minute, this is going to teach newer players that these techs are way cheaper than they normally are. You normally have to plan when you're going to buy these technologies at the right time in order to, make sure that you're not throwing off the rest of your game. And if you develop the habit of thinking, oh, I can pick up, double bit axe whenever I want. That's an easy buy, right? It costs virtually nothing, and I can get it right away. That might be confusing for newer players. But I think I'm going to lean in favor of seeing it as a positive. I think it's more important to encourage newer players to remember to get those techs in the first place. The stable techs costing less is nice too. I mean, that reinforces the importance of those technologies and using your stable. I don't know. I don't know where exactly. What do you think, Hiram? You tell me. Where do you think they belong?
So I've played this Civ a decent amount.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love the Burgundians. If they interest you, if you look at this and you're thinking, man, this looks fun, I'm going to give that a go, then do it. Right. Just like Kaiser said at the beginning. Having said that, let me ask you this. When you look at how this Civ stacks out, what comes to your mind? Does it keep the rules or break the rules?
That's a good question, man. That's good. I mean, you can go crossbows. I think it more breaks it than keeps it.
Exactly. And so when you're learning the game on a Civ that breaks a lot of the rules, it's not, I don't think it's good. So maybe put this with strong bonuses. I actually put it in with bad habits, and I'll tell you why. Because it is so tempting to grab those eco upgrades early, like right away, pretty much right away.
Yeah.
And it feels like they lean into, it feels like you're getting more benefit early. Why not? The timing of them and which ones you do is actually important, because you go from doing a fast castle build to a really slow castle build in just a few upgrades at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And it feels like it should be the opposite. It feels like with all these eco techs available earlier, I should be doing better, but they break the rules. And it's not just the eco. You get your cavalier in the Castle Age instead of in the Imperial Age, which is good, but that breaks that rule. And then you don't get the paladin.
Yeah.
Or wait, do you?
You do get the paladin. Yeah.
But you don't get bloodlines.
Right.
That was the one. So okay, you're playing Cav, strong Cav, but you're not learning how to play Cav right. You're learning how to play specialty Cav. Go into the Costilier, same thing. It's not Cav general you're learning. It's this Cav and only this Cav. And straight down the line, everything kind of breaks the rules when it comes to, how to play. So it's a fun Civ. It's got interesting mechanics. It's got strong mechanics. If it interests you, fine, you'll learn it. It's not going to break your game experience, but I don't think it teaches you the game.
This is a Civ that boggles my mind, because if we get comments on this video saying, "Oh, I would have put them," I'd say as high as good habits.
Yeah,
I'd be shaking my head, going, "Okay, yeah, I can buy that." I am halfway to putting them there as well. But I see the argument for saying, listen, it's a bonus that's so good, like you say, it breaks the rules and kind of goes back into, you're really going to be messing up your expectations for any other Civ if you go Burgundians. So
let's see how this plays out. Generally, again, don't take this for specific advice, but generally, when you hit feudal age, you make a decision, or you've already made it, ideally before you've hit it, but you do one of two things. You either lean straight into fast castling, moving up directly, or you decide that you're going to hang out in the feudal age for a little while and you get your eco techs and everything else.
Right.
But if you've already got them, then you're talking about getting your second tier of eco techs there, and it just messes up that whole tempo to where you're kind of doing the right thing, but you're not doing it for the right reasons, or I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the thing is, I just don't want to lose sight of how important it is to reinforce for newer players to remember to get the eco techs in the first place. And I think the Burgundians would do a very good job of that. But coupled with that, like you're saying, is I think in the long run, it could maybe set in some bad habits. So
I've put them under second learning curve, which is to say they're fine, but you're going to be learning two things at once, not just one thing at once.
Right.
So I have them right next to the Aztecs in that regard. They're not bad, but you're going to have to keep a bunch of stuff in mind to play them.
Yeah. Next up, we have the Burmese. And this is a fun one for me. I'll just go ahead and share what I think. On the one hand, they have some really nice bonuses. I love that they get the lumber camp text for free. I think that will just make your wood eco that much stronger. So that's a nice strong bonus. You could argue that, hey, you got to remember to learn to actually research those texts, and learning on Burmese means that you're not doing that. But, I just think that you're going to be learning a bunch of other things. Having that part be automated isn't the worst thing in the world. I think if anything, it will probably help you appreciate just how useful those lumber texts are. Having the extra attack on your infantry is nice. It's not the worst thing in the world. The battle elephants with extra armor, it's nice. It's not the worst thing in the world. The monastery text costing less, and the relics, this is the big one. Relics being visible on the map at the start of the game encourages newer players to remember to go out and actually get those relics, which is one of those habits that is never... that's a hard habit to pick up. It takes a long time to remember, hey, I've actually got to go and get those relics. So I like that bonus a lot for newer players learning the game. They're nice bonuses, but they also don't really reinforce a whole lot of essential habits. I think they're more important things to learn. So for me, I'm going to put them in... And not to mention, by the way, the other thing too, infantry and elephants, while these bonuses are nice, those are also units that I would encourage newer players not to prioritize when it comes to learning the game. I think that the Burmese might be pushing you towards units that, for me, I'd rather you learn the meta first. I'd rather you focus in on archers or focus in on knights and how they tend to work and how do you counter them and their strengths before you start trying to play majority infantry civs or elephant civs. So I'm going to put them on somewhere between average and strong bonuses. I'll put them on average, leaning into strong bonuses.
I put them on average in general, not because they're like average as far as strength, but because I think the things that they do well kind of counterbalance the things they don't. Kind of like I was saying about Meso, even if infantry and elephants are not the things necessarily a new player should learn, they are things that a new player is going to have to deal with pretty soon, and they might as well learn them now. So, like, you might as well learn how to play them. And backing up with the, I don't want to say the focus or the emphasis, but the ease of doing monk things is, helping you get over that hurdle of finding and identifying the relics into just grabbing them. So it's not quite to good habits, and it's not even a strong bonus, but it is something that will help you learn the game. It is a habit that does help you learn. So I've got it at average.
Yeah, we're on the same page here. Okay, next up we have the Byzantines, and this is a civilization that I think was designed for newer players, and let's go over why. First, we have buildings with additional HP throughout the ages, and the way that I interpret that bonus is it gives, especially newer players, just a little bit more reaction time to being attacked. So, you got walls in your base and you're busy doing things, and all of a sudden the alarms go off and you're getting hit by, scouts that are trying to rush you or knights that are attacking your base. And that extra HP just gives you a little bit more breathing room to try to respond, whether that's to get up spearmen or, build up walls behind the walls or whatever. That extra HP just gives you a little bit more breathing room, and that extra reaction time is particularly useful for newer players. If you're an experienced player, you may not even feel this bonus. You may not need this bonus, but it helps for newer players. Then you have the trash bonus. Camel riders, well, camels aren't trash, but camel riders, skirmishers, pikemen, halberdiers all cost 25% less. And to me, this is a bonus that encourages you to learn the counters of the game. I've talked with newer players, some of the Noob Cup contestants, who have, they still play AoE and they're learning the game. And one of the things I keep hearing from them is, okay, what counters archers again? Oh, yeah, skirmishers, right. What do I build against knights? Oh, yeah, spearmen, that's right. Okay, I'll go spearmen, pikemen. And having this bonus, I think, encourages you to commit to memory, those different counter units. Oh, yeah, camels counter knights, spearmen counter knights, skirmishers counter archers. And it also helps you, if you're suddenly in a situation where I'm being attacked by knights and I need these units now, well, the cheaper cost means it's easier to get them out. It's easier to mass them. I think that's a bonus that is extremely useful for newer players learning counter-civs. The Fireship bonus is nice. The cheaper Imperial Age is a nice bonus. I don't think that's breaking the rules too hard to where that's a detriment to the Byzantines. I think it's a nice bonus. I like the 100% the monk kill speed bonus, so that encouraged you to use your monks in that way, which is something that I think you and I are both learning to appreciate ourselves. So I think for new players, that's a huge thing too. Probably the only thing that gives me pause for putting them at the top of the list is, one, they don't have a bonus for a particular strategy. As Byzantines, you can go archers, you can go knights, but you're not necessarily encouraged into any particular strategy. And I think that's helpful for newer players. You're trying to figure out, what do I do with this civ? And with the Byzantines, you have options, but you're not pointed in any particular direction. That is maybe a good thing, but it's also maybe, in the long run, you want to learn that flexibility. But in the short term, I think it's useful to have, that sign pointing you in a particular direction. And you have the Cataphract, which is a unique unit that does break the rules. It's a Cataphract that really does a very good job of countering the unit that normally counters cavalry. So it's a cav unit that doesn't really take a whole lot of damage from pikemen and actually has great anti-infantry damage. So they do a good job wiping out the unit that normally wipes out cav. And you need to counter cataphracts with archers or knights of your own. Gold units beat cataphracts, but cataphracts will beat trash units. So it's an awesome unit. It's a great unit, but I would worry about it being confusing to newer players. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in good habits, although I can see the argument for putting them all the way up at the very top.
So for me, they are my ultimate learning the game civ. If somebody said, okay, I'm just learning the game and I know nothing about them, what they're good at, how they play, anything else, and they say, give me a civ to pick, I'm going to send them to the Byzantines every time. And for what it's worth, it's been that way ever since the old Age of Kings days, before the Conquerors expansion was even available, at least to me. They've just always been that. So here's why. I think having a slant to a tech is good, or can be good, helpful. See what I said about the Britons earlier, for instance? Yeah. I also think it can be good to play without anything like that at all, because while you might go into a game intending to try this or that strategy, you're going to get into situations where right out the gate, for one reason or another, you're going to find that it's not an option. You're going to find that I was going to go archers, but guess what? These guys are the anti-archer civ.
The Vietnamese.
Can't do archers. Right. What do I do? Yeah. Can't do archers. What do I do? And if you're playing something that does not have that flexibility, or that has that slant, you can make mistakes. If you do Britons into Vietnamese, just like you said, then it can be tempting to be like, I'm going to do archers anyway. Maybe it'll work. Right. Because it looks like you're being slanted to that direction. And so you don't learn how to counter. You don't learn how to adapt. I think the Cataphract is a little confusing, but I don't think that the way the game is set up or designed reinforces that confusion. I think it actually pulls confusion away. Yeah, they're good against counter units, okay, and they're worse against gold units. But guess what? The Byzantines actually get good regular cav. Like, they can build paladins of their own. They can build camels of their own. They can do all those things. So if you have somebody trying to lean into cav, especially considering the cost of the cataphract, it's expensive. I think you're going to naturally trend towards normal cav before you go into the cataphract, and you're going to treat the cataphract more like a specialty unit, which is exactly what it is. Other little things, getting up to the Imperial Age a little earlier for a new civ, you know, that trebuchet war that normally happens, or for a new player, not a new civ. Right. Being able to get up just a little faster means you've got a chance to actually fight the trebuchet war instead of just going, well, they got up to imp first, I've not even teched it, I guess I forfeit. Not saying you should forfeit in that situation, by the way, but sometimes it feels like you've got no other choice.
Right.
All sorts of little things like that. They teach you the game. I think the cataphract breaks the rules a little, but their whole lineup teaches the game so well. And here's the other thing. I won't say they're equally good on sea or on land, but they're respectable in both. They have a full talk lineup. So no matter who you're playing against, no matter what map you're on, Byzantines will generally work. Generally.
Right. And they are a very, very flexible civilization. You're exactly right.
If you're going to pick one civ and play against everyone else on every map, just that one civ, it's really hard to beat the Byzantines.
You know, you make good arguments, and I think it is very respectable to put them at the very top on Excellent Tutorial. I think for me, it's just my instincts are to lean a little more toward a civ that does point you in a particular direction. But I see the flexibility. And in fact, I'll give you this. The fact that you might, if you're a newer player, one of the other habits that you have to learn is to not rely on your unique unit in every situation. A habit that I had to break, and I know others have had to break, is I'm going to go up to Castle Age and you know, throw down my castle and build my unique unit, and I'll just win with my unique unit every time because it's the coolest unit. The cataphracts are cool, and they are amazing in the right situation, and they're pretty decent knights too, so they're a very good unique unit. But if you find yourself saying, wait a minute, why did my unique unit lose to my enemy's knights? And you know, that's not fun, and maybe I should have built regular knights instead. That honestly is a good habit to learn as well. So yeah, I see the argument. I see it. I think if you put Byzantines at the very top, I respect it. Next up, we've got the Celts. And for the Celts, you have infantry that move a little faster. Lumberjacks work a little faster. Siege workshops work a little faster. Siege weapons fire a little faster. This is an infantry and siege civilization. I like all of these little bonuses. They are an infantry civ, and that does scare me for newer players. I don't think you should learn the game on infantry civs. I do like these bonuses. They don't change a whole lot. I think one thing that is scary to me is this final bonus about the being able to steal sheep within your scout's line of sight. That is a bonus that you should not be using in most games. You're most likely to just get your scout killed, or you know, trying to make something happen that's just not gonna happen. And I think that can be more confusing than anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and lean into, maybe it's bias against infantry. For a new player learning the game, I'm putting them in average. I think they have nice bonuses. I could see an argument for strong bonuses. The lumberjacks are nice, but for me, I'm just gonna put them on average.
So I put them there for the same reason. For two, here's the other thing though. Like, okay, so the whole can steal sheep thing, I agree with you 100%. You should not be trying to steal sheep until you're no longer an utter noob. You're just a little noob,
right?
You know, like the rest of us.
Right.
But the idea that sheep cannot be stolen is super helpful, because you're going to get scouted early, and you know, let's face it, some players just love stealing sheep, and having sheep that can't be stolen, it does help you.
That's nice.
It doesn't help a lot, but it does help. Here's the other thing. For me personally, the two units that I just tend not to use are siege units and monks. partially because, I played other civs that just did not have great siege. Like, the Britons, they've got great trebuchets, but not great siege, siege workshop units. And so that's scarred me. That's made it to where I've got, I don't know, I have a harder time leaning into monk plays and siege plays, even though I really should be beyond that by now. Mm-hmm. So I can see a good solid argument for saying, look, this helps break that mold and get you into the right thing. The downside to that is it gets you into that mold by costing you another one.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It doesn't help
right.
teach the game, it helps teach siege.
Yeah.
So I can see that argument, and I'm just kind of anticipating what some of the viewers might think, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But all that to say, I put them at average. I see why somebody would say no, they're not. They're actually pretty good.
Right.
But I don't see a compelling reason to play them or to really avoid them. They're just they're average.
I think if anything, like you were saying, it does encourage you to use your siege workshop and to experiment with how do I use battering rams? How do I use scorpions? How do I use mangonels? I think that, for someone who's already got some experience under their belt and realizing, like for me, even in my own experience, more often than not, I just go up to Imperial Age and get trebuchets, and I don't tend to take a lot of advantage of my Castle Age siege options. And so Celts can be really fun once you've got some experience under your belt learning how these different siege units can work. But I feel like you need some experience under your belt in order to appreciate those sorts of bonuses. For someone who's still learning, 6 on sheep, then what? It's like the basics. Yeah. You're wanting to build a foundation. I don't think the Celts give you a whole lot. So,
not only that, they're an infantry and a siege civ, and economically, infantry is food and gold, siege is wood and gold.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to lean into both your advantages, it's hard to manage economically, or learn how to manage economically. So it's not shown in the the bonuses. Mm-hmm. It's just it comes out in the wash though. So I just don't think it's bad, but it's definitely not on my recommended list.
I'm going to add one more thing, and then we'll move on to the next one. The other thing is, much like the Britons, who are at the very top of the list, but with the Celts, it's the same thing, where you have the Woad Raider, which is a really fast-moving infantry unit, but you also have regular infantry that move faster than normal. So they kind of do the same thing. Now, I understand that they really do, you can use them very differently. Woad Raiders are more like infantry versions of Scout Cav that are very good at raiding. In pro games and at the competitive level, they are used differently, but it can give the feeling, especially for a newer player, like, wait a minute, these two units are kind of doing the same thing. Why would I pick one instead of the other? That can get a little confusing. So, average. Yep. Next up, we have the Chinese. I think we both should be on the same page on this one. There are some really cool bonuses that the Chinese have. The cheaper technology techs are fantastic. That would be learning to use your technology. Said, hey, remember to get your techs. Remember to use this bonus. That's great. Town centers that support additional population of extra line of sight is an amazing bonus for newer players. The Chokanu is a really fun, unique unit, and I think fun, unique units are good for newer players to have. So farms having additional food, all of that is great for newer players. But starting the game with an additional 3 villagers and then 50 less wood and no food means you have to learn the Chinese build order unique and differently from any other civilization in the game. That means they belong right into dangerous habits. Avoid learning the game with the Chinese, because if you learn the game with the Chinese, you're going to have to kind of reset your brain and learn all of the other civs all over again. Way better to start the game learning on any other civ, and then once you've got some experience under your belt, come to the Chinese and learn how they are unique and how you should approach them differently from any other civ.
Put it this way, the Chinese are the chaotic neutral of AoE.
Okay, explain this to me. Why?
Because they can do everything but nothing right away, but they're really strong but also really hard. And so, like, they're not good, They're not bad. It's just chaos. Just trying to figure out what the heck do I do with this? I don't know what I do with this. So much is thrown into flux. It's not like other civs that we'll get to later, where it's only one thing that makes a profound difference.
Yeah.
But it's all chaos. Like, I've got infantry and archers, but not all my cav. But I can't do anything like my normal start. I mean, it's just chaos.
Yeah.
So if you're into chaos, if you're into weird and zany, and you like being thrown for a loop, okay, fine, pick the Chinese. Otherwise, I have them at the bottom in the
I would agree. Yeah, I agree. Of all of the civs, if there was any civilization that I would say no, don't pick the civ, it would be the Chinese, because they are so different. I mean, once you get over that initial, once you get out maybe your 10th, 11th villager and you kind of stabilized, then they're a great learning civ. But just starting out, they are so different from every other civilization in the game and how you're supposed to play them. You need to embrace idle TC time with the Chinese that you shouldn't be doing with any other civilization ever. It's just, they're so different. Just don't learn on Chinese.
Yeah, don't do it.
Okay. Unless you're planning on maining Chinese and nothing but Chinese, and you're willing to just, if that's the civ for the rest of your Age of Empires experience or whatever, or you're willing to embrace that weirdness, then don't start with Chinese.
And here's the other reason I say that they're the chaotic neutral. Nobody knows what you're going to do.
That's true. They're very flexible, like the Byzantines.
Yeah, they're flexible, but they're flexible offensive. Like Byzantines are flexible because they can build all the counters. Right. Chinese are flexible because they can build all the offensive stuff. Now, Byzantines have some of that too, so make no mistake.
Yeah.
But like, if I see an enemy lock in the Byzantines, my first thought is, okay, they're going to be able to do pretty good counters to anything I throw at them. I wonder what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
If I see an enemy lock in Chinese, I think, oh, good heavens, what the heck are they going to do?
Right.
Yeah,
so that I would set the Chinese maybe as a goal to work toward. Like, once you get your build order down, and once you start feeling really good with the game, then you learn the Chinese and you open up this really cool civ, a real Pandora's box of options. But learning the game on the Chinese, no, don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
All right, next up we have the Cumans or the Cumans. I don't know. How do you pronounce that? I go back and forth on that one.
Pronounce it Cumans, but only because I played Kingdom Come Deliverance. So
do they call it Cumans in that one?
Cumans, yeah.
Wait. They called it Cumans or Cumans?
Cumans.
Okay, yeah, Cumans. All right, I'll stick with Cumans. I tend to default to that more often than not, but I don't know. It can go either way. Anyway, the Cumans, they have some really fun bonuses, but I'm going to go ahead and put them in the difficult to appreciate category because I think that it's almost kind of like a version of the Chinese where I think if you're a newer player and you're looking at these bonuses and you say, oh, wow, this is cool. I get an extra town center in the feudal age and I get siege workshop in the feudal age and my archer ranges and stables are cheaper and I get a battering ram in the feudal age. And so I need to use all of these bonuses, right? If anything, it may be a useful civilization to teach a newer player that civilizations, not all civs should use all bonuses in all games, right? The Cumans are one of those civilizations where what you're supposed to do is go either or. Either go with the extra town center or go with the cheaper archer ranges into an archer rush or something like that. And you can go offensive or defensively. You might use the feudal age siege workshop and battering rams, but you might not. And you're not supposed to use all of these bonuses in every game. If you go for that feudal age town center, well, that is a really different game and a really different experience than what other civilizations provide. I think it's very dangerous. I'm not going to go so far as to say it develops dangerous habits, but I think it's difficult to appreciate. It's difficult to understand for newer players. I would encourage newer players to avoid the Cumans.
See, I've just renamed my secondary learning curve tree to whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
And that's where I put the Cumans. Mm-hmm. I think there's value. Like, again, a player who says, yeah, this is the one I'm going to pick and get good at. Yeah, I think there's a good potential there. for several reasons. Just like with the Bulgarians, buildings costing less wood just frees stuff up. It encourages building that kind of thing.
Right.
I agree with you that the whole siege workshop available in the feudal age, along with another TC, throws some confusion, but I have to throw this in there as well. Most players don't build siege workshops, at least when they're new. At least until they get into mid-late game anyway. So most new players aren't going to take advantage of that. And if they do, good for them. They're a whole nother ballgame, though. You've got to decide when you want to put your pressure, when you want to start your boom. You have more options for that. But knowing when you want to do it and when you don't want to do it is a little tricky. I will say this, though. Like, leaving the boom aspect out of it, leaving the whole optimizing out of it for a second.
Right.
Creating a second town center for a new player has two different benefits. Number one, it teaches you to make more TCs. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is it means you can put a TC next to your wood line and not have to deal with being raided, at least not as bad. You will have to untrain the whole town bell reliance, which does take time. And so you've got some difficulty there, but it does help with dealing with other civs that are just really good at raiding. You don't have to wall up your whole thing. You don't have to practice pocket wall, and you're not locked into, it gives you another way to deal with that. It does help you learn other things. Yeah. So I don't think they're bad. I don't even think they're bad for new civs. They're just a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, for me, one of the things that I'm looking for are, if you're a newer player, you're learning the game, you're learning these new civs, you want a civilization that sort of teaches you basic principles that go into most of the other civilizations. And you're exactly right. With the Cumans, they'll teach you some good habits, but it's also a whole nother ball game. And it's going to feel like if you go from Cumans to Byzantines, for example, you almost need to relearn more of the game than not. And I think that's the danger. The Chinese would be an extreme example of that. You have to relearn so much of your opening moves, where it's like you learn Chinese and then you learn everything else. Yeah. Cumans kind of can be in that ballpark unless you ignore the second town center, which at that point, you have the cheaper military buildings, which are nice, but I don't know. I think that for newer players, they're going to gravitate to those bonuses. They'll want to build a second TC, and then it becomes a whole other ballgame. So
here's my biggest beef with the Cumans. Their technology, which you can research at the castle, step husbandry, light cavalry, step latchers, lancers, and cav archers trained 100% faster. I never forget until after I've researched, or I never remember until after I've researched it, that does not apply to kit checks. Because they're cav archers, right?
Right.
Well, no, they're not. So, yeah.
I will say, if anything, that would, I'll give this bonus that credit, it would encourage you to go Cav Archer Scouts, which is a really nice army composition we see even in pro games. So that's cool, but I don't think that's, I would avoid them,
If you've never played AoE,
don't start with
I would not recommend, don't start with Cumans.
Dravidians. This is another Dynasties of India civ, so they're pretty new. They are an infantry civ, so you already know what I'm feeling about infantry civs. The fishing bonus is nice. The 200 additional wood when advancing to the next phase is just nice. These are nice bonuses. Faster firing skirmishers and elephant archers are nice. Docks providing additional population room. If you're learning on Nomad, they're pretty good Nomad civ, but I don't think they give you a lot that reinforces new play. I don't think they are terribly damaging either. They're an average civ for me.
Yeah, I put them firmly in average because, just like you said, there's nothing for them that's helpful. They're not super complicated per se, but I don't know. I just don't see anything here that's super helpful. I don't see any compelling reason to learn the game on this civ when there's another one that'll teach you any play. You want archers? There's a better one. You want naval? There's a better one. You want defensive? There's a better one. There is nothing you could do with this that I can think of that is not better taught initially with another civ. I'm not saying that this one doesn't do anything that no other civ does, but when we're talking about teaching and learning game mechanics and principles, this does not teach or help you learn anything that you won't learn better elsewhere.
Yeah. Next up, we have the Ethiopians. I feel like if you are the kind of person who looks at the list so far and says, the Britons are too strong, they're an OP civ, and I wouldn't want a new player to learn on an OP civ. If you're the kind of guy that would put the Britons down in the dangerous habits avoid category, Ethiopians are probably the archer civ to learn on. They have some really nice archery range bonuses. The archers fire faster, and you get additional gold and food when advancing to the next age. That's really nice. The pikeman upgrade is free bonus. That's a really cool bonus that encourages you to build multiple types of units at the same time. You go archers, and then you build a second unit to back up the weakness of archers. If you have archers and you go, well, what happens if my archers get attacked by knights? Bam, you already have pikemen ready to go. And learning to synergize is a deeply important skill to learn. You have the Shotel Warrior, a unique unit that actually synergizes with your archer composition rather than competing against it. Do I go longbows or archers? So those things are pretty cool. Having said that, I don't think that you don't really get an eco bonus at all until you actually advance up to the next age. I don't think it encourages a lot of good habits other than maybe that synergy. For me, I would not put them on excellent tutorial civ. I don't know that I even put them in good habits other than the synergy aspect, which maybe is a little obscure anyway. I'm putting them in strong bonuses. I think they're a good civ to learn archers on. They're a fun civilization to play with, but they don't reinforce habits quite as strongly as some of the other civs we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, I agree. I think as far as honestly, I disagree with you a little bit when you start talking about OP civs. I think
I was not saying that's not my view. I was saying if you're the kind of person who has that view.
Yeah, I think Ethiopians are out in a way a stronger archer civ. They pay for it in other areas, so I'm not saying they're a better civ. But as far as archers go, if you are spamming archers as the Ethiopians against another player who's spamming archers as the Britons, assuming an equal skill level, I think the Ethiopians will generally win that for a few reasons that I'm not going to go into here. But I think they have strong bonuses, and I do think they help teach, if you want to learn archers, Ethiopians is a great civ to do it on.
Yep.
It really is. So I personally, as far as learning goes, I don't like the free pikeman upgrade, because one of the most important things to do if you're going to spam archers is remember to get that upgrade. So you learn archers as Ethiopians, and you're going to play game after game where you go, oh crap, forgot to upgrade to pikemen, and spearmen they barely tickle knights. Spearmen counter scouts, and then suddenly you're dealing with knights and you're just getting wasted.
Right.
And so you're adding a second learning element in there, which is fine. You can learn the game pretty well as the Ethiopians, but I don't think that it is well suited to teaching the game, at least not as well as the Britons.
Fair point. Yes, I got that as strong bonuses. Next up, we have the Franks. And again, we just mentioned OP civs. I know you are the world's biggest Franks fan, Hiram. You are all about the Franks, right?
Okay, before we go any farther, I'm just going to get this out there. I have nothing against the Franks. I hate playing against them, not because they're super strong, but because if you beat them, it's because you knew exactly what they were going to do. And if you lose to them, it's because you knew exactly what they were going to do, and it didn't make any difference anyway. It just removes a lot of the next level play, the thinking and adapting.
Well,
they're just really good at one thing.
I don't know. In my experience, I will say, in my experience, the Franks have fallen off as not being. I find the Britons more oppressive than the Franks do. For me, it's anyway, we're getting a little tangential, but the Franks are a very strong Cav civilization, and I am thinking they are the knight version of the Britons. They have a very strong ecotech, actually a couple of really good synergistic economic bonuses. Their mill techs are free, so that encourages you to put down farms, which is an important habit to learn. Their foragers work faster, so you're getting more food out of your berry bushes faster. That food is great for your army because you're likely to go into either scouts or knights. Both cost a lot of food. So their eco bonuses fit well with their likely composition. You have bonuses that point you toward a particular strategy, in this case your cav line. Whether those are scouts or knights, you will learn to play cavalry, which is a very important thing for brand new players to learn. You have the cheaper castles, which again kind of reinforce, hey, I should be building castles, and where should I build them? I should build more than one. Those are all very good habits to learn. And for me, a huge thing not to overlook is how their unique unit synergizes well with their composition. They're not like the Britons where you have longbow cav, which just competes with your regular knights. And should I go, my unique knight or my regular knight? Instead, you play knights and, oh no, they're building spearmen. What do I do about that? All right, I've got all these castles. I can build my unique unit. And the unique unit deals with the knights, and you learn to use multiple types of units at the same time. That is a very important bonus. I've got to put them on an excellent tutorial civ.
As bad as it hates me,
yeah,
or as it pains me, I have to do the same thing. I don't like it. And while we're on the subject, I have to say, one of the things that I have seen over and over is players who play the Franks, and I feel like the Franks are really strong, and that's all they learn. They learn the scout rush into knights, into throwing axemen, forward castle drop, and that's game. Mm-hmm. And I cannot tell you how many times I have had several games, not just one, several games, where they have tried to raid me as the Franks, and simply seeing my stone walls, they forfeit because the one thing they practice doesn't work.
Right.
So if I agree with you, they're a great learning civ, but don't do that.
That's a fair point. There's sort of a little bit of a meme around the Franks in particular. If there's one civilization that attracts people who are like, I'm going to learn this civ and no other civ, I'm looking for cheap, easy wins, and I'm never going to learn any of the rest of the game, nothing but this civ forever, it is the Franks. And so be aware, first off, of just the funniness of it, the kind of the mimetic aspect of it.
It is kind of funny.
But also, be aware, too, that there is sort of this vacuum effect where the Franks are so good that, again, it can warp your experience of other civilizations. And even when you're playing the Franks, consider other strategies. Consider the possibility of surprising your opponent with archer play. Or, go for, unique strategies. Go for like a monk siege rush into throwing axemen or something like that. Consider other possibilities. Be aware of the fact that they are so good that you may be encouraged to not ever practice other types of strategies, other types of units. That is something to have in the back of your mind. But for someone who's just learning out, I think they are a really strong civ, and they shouldn't shy away from the Franks just because there are some bad apples out there that do nothing but Franks.
Absolutely.
Next up, we have the Goths. Okay, so I know I've been kind of bad-mouthing infantry civs, right? And part of me wants to say that the Goths they run the risk of kind of being, like you were talking about earlier, one of those civs that has their own ball game. They play differently from any other civ. Having said that, if we're looking at their bonuses, let's go through these real quick. Infantry costs less throughout the ages, so they encourage you to practice and experiment with infantry. Not to mention, a huge, important habit to learn as an Age of Empires player is to mass army. I've mentioned that several times already. Massing is important, and it's something I see newer players not do. They'll build 5 units and call it a day. Well, I've got my 5 knights, I'm good. Now can I win, right? And learning to mass up and get big numbers, and to throw a wave at your opponent and then build another army back at home while the first army is doing its job. That is a skill that takes time to learn, and the Goths encourage you to learn those sorts of massing techniques. They have bonuses to their infantry attack versus buildings. The villager hunters have several bonuses to them. Loom is technology that's researched instantly, and that encourages you to pick up loom and how important loom is. These are all very good noob bonuses that help you learn the game. And I think I've got to give something to some infantry civ. Learning how to use infantry, learning how to mass. I'm going to go ahead and, with a little bit of a nod to our infantry players, I don't want to put them all in average. I think I'm going to put Goths in strong bonuses. I think they've got one really good habit that they learn. They've got some really nice bonus for new players. I still think that there is maybe a danger in learning nothing but Goths, because they are a little different from a lot of other civs, but I think they belong in strong bonuses.
I disagree. I think they belong at the very top.
The very top! Excellent tutorial civ!
Top.
Okay, hit me with it.
Excellent tutorial civ. Here's why. Number one, your initial gameplay is unchanged, which is more than we can say for a lot of other civs.
True, fair.
Villagers,
very good.
villagers to sheep, villagers to wood, then to boar, then to berries, and all that other thing remains unchanged. So you're going to learn. One of the big things that scares a lot of players is you don't get stone walls, but in a lot of games you don't build stone walls. Mm-hmm. So that's also not a big deal. You get, in the first 3 ages, you are respectable on all fronts.
That's true.
Your archery range, yeah, you can do Goth archers. Done it. It works. It's not the strongest archers. You're not going to out-archer the Ethiopians, but it does work. You can do cav. You can scout rush, partially because, you do have a slight food bonus in the way the villagers deal with boar, and you generally do deal with boar. You can scout rush. You have husbandry and bloodlines. You can do that. You've got all of these, flexibilities. You've got these options open to you. So you don't get pigeonholed in the first few ages into one strategy. As the game progresses, your late game cav are just not going to cut it. They're not bad, but you don't get paladin. It's just not going to cut it. And you don't get all the blacksmith techs either. So there's that. But for the first 3 ages of the game, you can do a lot of different things. Also, it does teach you the spam. Not just the traditional Goth spam, but kind of what you're talking about getting multiple buildings that are constantly producing, getting big army out. It teaches that very well. Lastly, it gives you an answer to what a lot of other players do, which is the archer spam. If you're dealing with initial Britons or Ethiopians players and you can't deal with the archers, the Goths have a unique advantage. They've got a solution to that other players have to go into like rams or try to micro skirmishers or other stuff. It's just harder. The Goths give a solution to that as well.
Right.
So you can tech switch. Your early game is unchanged. You've got respectable presence everywhere until mid castle. Heck, even your dock is pretty good.
Yeah.
All things considered. So I see no compelling reason whatsoever to put the Goths anything lower than an excellent learning civ. Now, mind you, I am not calling them an excellent, although they might be. This is not about their strength. Yeah. This is about if you're learning game mechanics, if you're learning principles of how to go. Obviously, just like with the Franks, don't get locked into the foo strat. Don't just decide Huskarl spam is the future and go. It's fun, but don't do it. Experiment with different things. But it is a great civilization for teaching different things. Yeah,
that's... And what you just highlighted there is sort of the one thing that's in the back of my mind, which is, I think newer players, they look at these bonuses and they will be guided by the bonuses. And I think with the Goths, you're just likely to play nothing but infantry. You make a very compelling argument. And I'm right now, you've got me wondering, of all of my civs that I've selected, Goths right now are the ones that I'm kind of like, have I made the wrong choice on them? I could be shaken. For now, I'll stand by my choice. I will live or die, on my call here. But I can see the argument for putting them at the very top. So anywhere from I think strong bonuses now, I'm kind of feeling like they're at least strong bonuses, maybe into good habits, maybe into excellent tutorial civ. They're pretty solid. Okay, next up we have Gurjaras, which are the third of the 3 new civs that came with the Dynasties of India expansion, unless you're counting Hindustanis. Whether you count them as just reworked Indians or, a new civ is your call. But Gurjaras are third here. They are a totally different ballgame civ in my book. As a new player, you're gonna want to do one of two things. Either you look at these bonuses and you say, "Oh wow, they start with extra forage bushes, and you can garrison sheep in the mills, and the sheep produce constant. There's a constant trickle of food in the mill, and we can use the berries." That aspect of it alone, you're either going to ignore that, which you're unlikely to do, I think, if you're looking at these bonuses. But you could ignore it and you can learn the usual build order, but then you're not taking advantage of what the Gurjaras do. Or you stuff all of your sheep in the mill, and then you're using the bushes, and then you're just, for good or ill, you're likely being inefficient. But even if you're not, setting that aside, you are playing a very different game from how any other civ plays. So I think the early eco aspect, it's confusing. Now, you might say it's a nice thing for newer players to be able to just put the sheep in the mill. You got a constant trickle. They don't have to worry about their food eco, and they can focus on other things. That's an argument. In my opinion, learning how to manage your early economy is critical, and you would be missing out if you're not learning how to manage sheep and get your shepherds doing the right things, and I think that's important. So there's that, coupled with the fact that the Gurjaras are, in my experience so far, the ultimate, maybe even more than Byzantines, the ultimate counter-civilization. They live or die on their ability to counter their opponent. If you're Gurjaras and you're playing against the Franks, you go, "Oh, I know they're going cav, I'm going to mass up early camels, and my camels will beat their knights, and I'll win because my units counter theirs." Or, "Oh, I'm playing against Ethiopians, I'm going to go Shrivamsha Rider because my cav will beat their archers," right? But if you don't successfully play the counter game, they seem to just sort of fall apart, at least in my experience. Maybe I'm not the best with them, but Gurjaras are a tough civilization to play in that sense, and you lose access to knights. I don't know that your archers are the best in the world. I don't know. They just, to me, I've got to put them in difficult to play.
I'm in a whole nother ball game.
Yeah.
Just like you said. I think they have value as a civ, but almost no value in learning the game. Like, they're good at countering things. But even then, like, a lot of the stuff that they teach you to counter, hey, they're building archers, we build the Shrivamsha Rider. Well, that only works for Gurjaras.
Right, no other civ has Shrivamsha Rider, right.
No other civ helps.
Right.
Pretty much everything. And if you look at their unique units, again, they've got an anti-infantry. They've got an anti-archer cav. They've got an anti-cav camel. Great. They're great at counters. Right. But that doesn't teach you the game.
Right. Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, probably the closest thing is the camels beating knights, but even that is you have the feudal age camels that you can mass up, and they now your feudal camels beat their scouts, and it's so unique and different. For me, on my list, I'm not going to put them as low as dangerous habits like with the Chinese. I don't think they're Chinese level, but you're right. It's a whole other ball game. It's difficult to play or appreciate these. As a new player, you're likely to either not know how to work them or not understand how they're different. They're better off being avoided.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have the Hindustanis. I think with Hindustanis, so let's go through this, right? You have the villagers costing less throughout the ages. They cost less food in the Dark Age, Feudal Age, Castle Imperial. I love that bonus for a newer player. I think it encourages you to keep villager production going, which is a critical habit to learn. So I really like that one. I don't think that it's so overwhelming of a bonus that it impacts your experience with other civilizations, but it's just a really nice bonus for newer players. Camel riders attacking faster. I love this bonus generally because camel riders, it makes them a better all-around unit. So they do a good job attacking knights, but then if you have camels attacking villagers on a raid, or they're attacking archers or whatever, they can just put out more damage in general. I really like that. So it's nice to be able to go camels with them. The gunpowder units having extra armor is a nice noob bonus. It means, like, typically if you're playing gunpowder, you shouldn't be in a situation where your hand cannons are being attacked at all. But if they are being attacked, well, they're tankier. They can withstand more damage. I like that. If you are playing gunpowder, that's a nice bonus for newer players. The Caravanserai we will ignore, of course, in a 1v1. The unique techs are nice. They're a nice civ. I think it lives or dies on how much you value that villager discount cost. And so for me, I think it's strong bonuses at most. I'm going to go ahead and put them at average. I think you need a little bit more to make them a good noob-friendly civ. The one bonus is really nice. Everything else is kind of nice, but not really that strong.
Yeah, like
average.
It makes it to where, like some of the other civs, we've put the Burgundians pretty low on the list. We put the what's the other gunpowder civ? Bohemians. We put them pretty low on the list. As far as noob viability, this is the first one that we've come across that if gunpowder's your thing, you've got some. You can begin learning on this and still do decent on gunpowder, right? So that's worth pointing out.
Yeah. Well, it's to me
drinking gunpowder.
The difference between the Hindustanis and the Bohemians is the Bohemians, everything about their civilization description says, go gunpowder. Gunpowder is the thing. You need to go gunpowder. And that is a very dangerous message to send to new players. With the Hindustanis, it seems more like you've got options, and it's saying, hey, if gunpowder's your thing, we got this bonus for gunpowder over there.
Exactly. That's super helpful.
Yeah. It's helpful, but it's also not screaming at you that you must go gunpowder. This is the gunpowder civ.
So far, if you're into gunpowder, of all the ones we've covered so far, Hindustanis is a good pick.
Yeah.
You've got options. You still got options. And kind of like the Goths, like, you don't have the best archers, but you got good archers.
Yeah,
it's decent.
Yeah.
You don't have the best infantry, but you got good infantry. You don't have the best cavalry. Well, you don't really want to be going cavalry at all, but you can go scouts and camels. That's not bad.
All right. Yeah, they got really nice camels. Yeah.
So, like, okay. But at the end of the day, it is kind of helpful, but not super helpful.
Yeah.
So I also put them in average.
All right. Yep. Next civ. Huns and new players. We've got to be on the same page on this. They're not Chinese bad. And if we take a look at the rest of the civ, not quite that bad. If we look at the rest of the civ, cav archers cost less. Well, that's nice if you're learning cav archers. You mass up. That's a really fun unit to play with. I think noobs don't really use cav archers a whole lot early on, which is a shame because they're a really good civ, a really good unit to use. The Trebs having extra accuracy. That's really nice. Stables working 20% faster. That's a really big bonus. It makes them the cavalry version of the Britons as far as that team bonus goes. So they're a really nice civ. But not needing to build houses is an incredible bonus. It's a really nice bonus that is, in fact, so nice it loops around into being a crutch for new players. If you're learning the game with the Huns and you're like, oh yeah, I never have to worry about houses ever. I never have to worry about my population limit. Well, that means that when you try to play any other civilization, you're going to have to start all over from ground zero learning when do I build houses. Oh yeah, I'm getting housed again. I need to build more houses. Much better to pick a civ where right out of the gate, you've got to learn to build those houses, and then you get to benefit from the Hun bonus. But starting out with the Huns, I think, is dangerous because learning to manage your population limit is a very important aspect of playing Age of Empires 2, and you just don't have to do that with the Huns.
Gotta say, like, not needing to build houses, that's good. Okay, fine, that's good.
Right.
But they don't need to build houses, they cannot build houses.
Right. And
there are some elements to the game that, like it or hate it, you're going to have to learn. One of them is the house wall.
Right.
The quick wall. You're just going to have to learn it. So it's not even just that it takes away the requirements to do a vital mechanic. It takes away the possibility of doing a vital mechanic. And that's a big deal. Not only that, like, again, back in the day, they just didn't need houses. That was it. I think. I could be wrong, but I think that was it. Now they start with, negative 100 wood. And so to a new player, especially when it comes to some maps, because we're not always playing on Arabia, like nomad maps, that's a big deal. That's bad. And then again, Trebuchet's 30% accuracy. Okay, that's nice, but that helps when you're using Trebs against units. And how often is a new player going to do that? Like Trebs don't miss buildings; they just don't. So, yeah, it's a good civ, but it is not a good noob civ. It teaches you bad habits. It prevents you from learning good habits. I have them at the very bottom. No bueno.
Yep, agreed. All right, and I think our last civ for part 1, we're looking at the Inca. And let's pull up the Inca. Once again, this is a Meso-civilization. So you have that whole, no stables, eagle warrior aspect. I will say, though, that of all 3 Meso-civilizations, if you were to pick one as a newer civilization, a newer player to learn the game on, I would pick the Inca. And the reason why is if we look at the bonuses, well, first off, you start the game with a free llama, basically an extra sheep, right? So that is a really nice, handy little bonus that just means that you're not quite as stressed out about, for trying to find all of your sheep right at the beginning of the game. Move your scout right away to get the sheep. You have one ready to go. It gives you a little bit of leeway, a little bit of extra food, which is nice. The fact that the houses support 10 population instead of 5. Now, you could look at that, like we were talking about with the Huns, as saying, hey, this is messing up messing up the tempo of how you build houses. But I think with the Inca, you are still learning to build houses. You're still learning the importance of managing your population limits.
Exactly.
And with this Inca bonus, it just gives you extra leeway. It just gives you a little bit more as you're building houses.
It takes the pressure off without removing it entirely.
Right, exactly. So that's a wonderful bonus for new players. The villagers being affected by blacksmith upgrades it's nice. Of course, we're used to seeing this as sort of a meme strat where they go, do tower rushes and that kind of thing. But we can set that aside and just say this is a nice bonus for maybe giving your villagers some extra survivability in the event that they, get attacked in the Castle Age. That's a cool bonus. Buildings costing 50% less stone. That's just a really nice all around, whether you're doing, stone walls or watchtowers, castles. That's a really nice bonus. So I think of all of the Meso-civs, not to mention the fact that they're a good all-around civ. You can go archers, you can go swordsmen. You have the Kamayuk, which is an excellent anti-cav spearman unique unit. They've got good options. And so for me, I've got to put them... I'm really torn. I want to give them strong bonuses. I'm going to go ahead. I started this video saying I'd give them average at best. I'm going to go ahead and give them strong bonuses. With the caveat being, the only thing with this civ is, once again, you don't get the stable. So if you're learning on this civ, you have to deal with, A, the weirdness of the Eagle Warrior, which is something very different from what the majority of the civs will give you with knights, or scouts for that matter. And then, on top of that, you're missing out on just managing bloodlines and, which one I'm thinking, bloodlines and husbandry, and just the whole knight cavalry line. You miss all of that if you go with the Meso-civ. That aspect worries me. It makes me want to drag them back down into average, but I can't ignore just how perfect of a beginner civ they are for Meso-civs. I got to put them in strong bonuses.
Yeah, I have them a tier above that. I have them all the way up in good habits, and here's why. So all of their bonuses, none of their bonuses detract from beginning strat, just kind of like we were talking with the Goths. Like your initial civ placement, or vil placement, what you put and where and when and all that, does not change. Mm-hmm. It's just a little easier. You can do a standard build, take houses, support 10 population. Standard build is build 2 houses, 2 villages on one, 2 on another. Right. You can argue with Inca, well, you don't need both. Yeah, but you can do both, no problem.
Right.
Won't hurt you a bit. Just do that. No problem. You can do a standard build with Inca, no problem whatsoever.
Exactly.
It houses support 10 population. I think that's a better way to do the Hun strat, or the Hun thing. Like, yeah, you still need houses. You can still build houses, which is important. Again, you can still do house walls and everything else, but you don't need them as often. They're unique techs. They help with, the first one, Ending Sling specifically, it helps with your trash. Like, it helps nudge you towards being able to counter the archer units. The Kamayuk, well, that helps you deal with cavalry and infantry. You've got counters. You're not an ultimate counter civ like other civs are, like the Byzantines, etc. But you do have answers to pretty much everything. You're not going to be a late game powerhouse. You're not a post imp, get my giant army up and mop over everything on the board. But you're not.
Yeah,
you're not weak.
I want to jump on that real quick because you just highlighted something important, which is that they are like a better, more normal version of the Gurjaras, in that you have better skirmishers to deal with archers. You have Kamayuk to deal with cavalry. Not to mention you do have spearmen as well.
Yeah, you still have spear, pike.
You have halberdier with a full tech tree. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. You still have skirmishers. You still have all that.
And you get the slinger, which is like a Castle Age version of the hand cannon. So you have an anti-infantry option too. So you're kind of a counter civ, but it's not as extreme as the Gurjaras. Yep. It might not be as good as Byzantines, but it's not as extreme as the Gurjaras. And then you have, again, some pretty strong offensive options too.
Exactly. Leaving out for a second that you don't get cavalry. As far as civ strengths and weaknesses, it is a very balanced civ.
Yeah.
You're never going to be a naval powerhouse. No Meso-civ is, so fine. Leave that aside for a sec. The standard infantry, cavalry, archer thing,
right.
You've got a pretty good rotation going. You're pretty solid. Yeah. Your buildings cost -15 stone. Okay, well, that's good. You can put down more castles. It's not as game-breaking as, say, the Frank bonus. Or I won't say breaking. It's not as potent as the Frank bonus. But it does help with not just your castles, but your towers and your walls. So you got some flexibility there. It makes any of those plays more feasible. I think it's a very, very good learning civ. If you're into Meso, if you like it, it's good. And there is nothing that it does that's like, this is going to hurt you when you go to other civs.
Right. Which for me is the definition of a strong bonuses civ. I don't know that it does an awful lot as far as the bonuses go to teach you some particular habit, unless you're looking at maybe just the countering. But that kind of goes back to the Gurjaras, where you've got slingers, but you're never going to use slingers, or Kamayuk. You're not.
Yeah.
So other than that, I don't think the bonuses like reinforce any particular habits that you have to build, but they just give you some really solid bonuses that make the game a little bit easier across the board for different things like building castles or throwing down houses and getting more pop space out of it. And they're just a solid, good noob civ.
Yeah, let me put it to you this way. The reason why I separate the two, and, it's not a big enough difference to, really split the line, but here's why. For people listening in. There are some civs that give good bonuses that, like, push you in a direction. You're going to want to do X then Y. Right? We have the Bulgarians there. They've got good infantry. If you want to do infantry, they will help you do good infantry. They will teach you... I'm sorry. We had... I'm misremembered. Regardless, you have bonuses that'll help you do a thing. That's where I put strong bonuses. You want to do this, that'll help you.
Yeah.
Good habits, though, it's where whatever you want to do, the civ will kind of get you there. That's not to say you're ever going to be the best at anything else, but it will teach you to do most plays. You want a fast castle? You can. You want a feudal rush? You can. You want a dark age rush? You still can. So it reinforces all the good things that you want to do. It reinforces maintaining your getting your blacksmith upgrades, because, well, that hits your villagers slightly without turning it into a game-breaking mechanic. The last thing I will say, and this is important because they had the worst team bonus in the game.
Right.
their team bonus now gives them just a little more potency in their trash.
Yeah.
And I don't think that should be negated.
Yeah.
You know, you see the enemy going archers, you've got an answer to that. And it reinforces that without being like, I'm a counter civ. You can counter offensively. And I think that's unique in AoE, and I think it's beautiful. I do like the Incas.
They're strong civ. Yeah. Well, that's going to be it for part 1. We'll see you on the flip side as we start off with the Italians and wrap up with the Vikings. For now, this is the Iron Kaiser along with Hiram of Tyre, signing out.